Nell Minow is an American film reviewer and writer who writes and speaks frequently on film, media, and corporate governance and investing. Ms. Minow was named one of the 20 most influential people in corporate governance by Directorship magazine in 2007. She was dubbed the Queen of Good Corporate Governance by Business Week Online and received Lifetime Achievement Awards from both the International Corporate Governance Network and Corporate Secretary magazine. So with that brief introduction, let me add that when you look at Nell and how mild-mannered she is, remember that Fortune magazine dubbed her the CEO killer. So, Nell.
Thank you very much, Newt. I'm actually from Chicago, and we talk very fast there too, as you will see. So some years ago, I was attending the annual meeting of a company called Stone & Webster, and they got to the part of the annual meeting where you vote on the board of directors. Now, this annual meeting was held in a little hotel room in Delaware. There were more people there from the company than there were shareholders, but I had taken the train up to attend. And when they got to the election of directors, I stood up and I said, I would like to ask a question. And the CEO and the board of directors all gave me the eye roll, you know. But fortunately, I have raised teenagers. I'm impervious to the eye roll. They said, well, can't you wait for your question till the end during the question time? And I said, no, I can't, because my question pertains to the election of the directors, and also I want to have it on the record, and questions that ask at the end of the meeting are not always on the record. So my question is, I would like each member of the board who are running for re-election here today to get up and tell everyone in the room why the stock of this company is a bad investment. And they said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm here on behalf of my clients who hold $5 million worth of the stock of this company, and nobody on the board has more than 200 shares. So clearly you know something that I don't. I want you to tell me what I'm missing. Boards of directors are like subatomic particles. They behave differently when they're observed. And I think the most important thing that you can do is to let them know that you're observing them. I'd like to change the name that was assigned to me for my topic, which has to do with the impact that shareholders can have on executives, managers of the company. Forget about the managers of the company. They are surrounded by a great big moat. You want to have your impact on the directors. The directors are the ones that work for you. They're the ones that have the legal duties of care and loyalty to the shareholders. They are the ones who are, in some respects, vulnerable because they are put up for election every year. And also, they've got one other major advantage, which is extreme reputational fragility. These are people who care very, very much about their reputations. That's how they get on boards, and they are not used to being criticized. They're used to being loved by everybody, and so they crumble pretty fast, as you heard this morning in Ray Rogers' presentation. So you've got a lot going for you there with boards. So I'm going to talk about what works and what is available to shareholders, but first I'm going to talk about what doesn't work. What doesn't work is divestment. I'm completely and unalterably opposed to divestment as a tactic. The happiest day of the CEO's life is the day that you, the complaining shareholder, sell your stock. To who? To someone who, by definition, does not care about the issue. So they are popping champagne corks while you feel that you are sending a message. The most important thing that you can do is buy some stock. Buy some stock in the company, preferably buy enough stock so that you can file a shareholder proposal and get some support from the other shareholders. So I am not supporting divestment. They don't care. As you just heard from my example, a very good way to affect what goes on in a company is to show up at the annual meeting. Get on the train, go to Delaware, go to where they are. They will try to relocate to some place that's hard to get to or to have the meeting on the same day as a lot of other shareholder meetings. So you've got to be on top of that. But go to the meeting and look them in the eye and ask them some questions. I have gone to annual meetings. At one point, there was a terrible CEO. It was an absolute nightmare. And I got him fired by the simple expedient. This was a while ago. This is before the internet. I faxed a copy of his CEO employment contract to the New York Times. They published it, and he got fired 5 months into his 5-year contract. And of course, what did they do? They paid him extra for a non-compete. So I went to the annual meeting, and I stood up and I said, I don't understand that. The best thing you could do at this company is let him go to work for the competition, because he'll do as badly over there as he did for this, and we will do better. The board did a lot better with their employment contract for the next CEO. So you want to let them know that you're paying attention, and a good way to do that is to go to the annual meeting. And when you do go to the annual meeting, what I recommend is that you write to the corporate secretary ahead of time and say, I just want to let you know I'm coming to the annual meeting, and we'll be getting up to ask some questions, and I will expect answers from the board members. If you've got a problem with the financial reporting, let them know you're going to be asking some questions of the head of the audit committee. If you've got a problem with the compensation, you'll be asking some questions of the compensation committee. So let them know your questions in advance, and that way they'll have a chance to prepare for it, and they'll know that this is coming. Submit a shareholder proposal. I strongly, strongly recommend, particularly if you have not done it before, that you go online and you look up sample shareholder proposals and use one that's already been written, because those are bulletproof. The ones that have already been voted on have already been challenged at the SEC. They've already passed muster. It is extremely easy to mess up and put in one word too many, or leave something out and get your proposal excluded. So what you want to do is use a proposal that's already been done. There's a lot of great proposals there on Citizens United issues, on climate change issues, and on CEO pay issues, and use them and submit them. Second thing is direct contact with the members of the board. Most companies now have what they call a lead director, which is the American way of addressing the problem that the CEO is usually the chairman of the board as well. The lead director is there as a kind of liaison between the shareholders and the independent directors, and you should not hesitate to get in touch with the lead director. When you do, write to them on paper with a stamp to their place of work, okay? Not care of the company. Company will probably not forward it. They'll send it over to the investor relations or the corporate secretary to answer you. Write to them directly at their place of work so that, again, they know that they are being observed. If you're not happy with what the board is doing, if particularly in a case like, say, Wells Fargo, the SEC has the authority, which they never use, to prevent people from serving on more public company boards. They can say, this board has done such a bad job, they should not be allowed to serve on any more boards. They never use that. There are people who are on the financial meltdown boards, they're still serving on boards. So one thing you can do is write to the SEC to ask them to use this authority, and of course CC the corporate secretary and the members of the board so they know that you've asked for this. One really underused option that shareholders have is the request for books and records. If you are a shareholder, you are allowed to ask for copies of the company's books and records, and they will charge you for that, or they'll make you schlep all the way to their headquarters or whatever. But what you want to do is ask them just for copies of the agendas and minutes of the board meetings, because that's not too expensive. If you're asking them for big, heavy volumes of financial reports, they're going to charge you for that. But it's only a few pages. In fact, lawyers will tell the company to have minimal minutes, so they're not going to give a lot of detail. But what they will tell you is, for example, when's the last time they talked about climate change risk? How often do they talk about CEO succession planning? And you can ask them why those things are missing if you get copies of the books and records. And again, that's a good way to let them know that you're paying attention, which is what it's all about. Wells Fargo is a good bad example. I'm glad that we've talked about that already this morning. But one of the things that came out of this recent hearing is that Wells Fargo knew 2 years ago that this was a problem and was completely unsuccessful at doing anything to prevent it. Let's talk about Wells Fargo for a minute. The actions that went on at Wells Fargo were not just fraudulent and criminal and violating the RICO statutes, racketeering statute. They're monumentally stupid. They're just almost mind-blowingly stupid. Just like in the financial meltdown, they were paying people based on the quantity of their transactions rather than the quality. And if you say to people, I will pay you extra every time you open up a new account for someone, and then don't say, and the account stays open, then they're going to open and close and open and close and open and close a lot of accounts. That's exactly what happened. We've seen that over and over again. That's exactly what happened in the financial meltdown. We paid them based on the number of derivative securities that they created and not on how good they were. We paid the ratings agency on the number of securities they rated and not on how accurate their ratings were. How dumb is it? A fourth grader could figure that out. So you have Wells Fargo, you've got a board of directors that not only allowed this idiotic compensation plan to be in place, but that knew there was a problem and didn't do anything about it. And so you can write to Wells Fargo and say, I'd like copies of the agendas and the minutes from all the board meetings to find out how many times this was actually discussed in the boardroom. So I think that's very effective. You know where you can't do that with? Mylan, EpiPen. You know why? Because they relocated their domicile in the Netherlands. They are now a Netherlands company, even though they do their business in the US, and most of their directors, I think, are British. But so the issue of inversion, of letting American companies reincorporate elsewhere is for another day, but that is something to be very careful about, because when this EpiPen situation comes up, there's very little the shareholders can do. Next thing is shareholder lawsuits, which can be very effective. Shareholder lawsuits are generally the purview of the major shareholders, the California Public Employees Retirement System, the New York City Retirement System, but as you could be a participant in some of those, or in any kind of institutional investor, find out whether whoever's managing your money is using these rights effectively. And that brings me to a key point, which we'll be addressing later today, which is to call your mutual fund. Call your mutual fund. Whoever manages your money, call them and ask them 2 questions. 1, please send me a copy of your proxy voting policies. Find out whether they are voting in favor or against these proposals on climate change, CEO pay, et cetera. What is their policy on buybacks? And second, it took my business partner, Bob Monks, who you'll be hearing from in absentia following this, it took us 14 years to get the SEC to require mutual funds to disclose how they vote their proxies. So please take advantage of that. It took us a long time to get that. Ask them for their most recent report on that. Some years ago, we were fighting with the company Sears, and Bob Monks went to Chicago to meet with the CEO of Sears, and he went in what was at one time the tallest building in the United States, then called the Sears Tower, to go meet with the CEO. And the CFO came down to meet him in the lobby, and they went up. It's like a 15-minute elevator ride to go up to their executive office on the 78th floor. And here were these 2 men who really despised each other in this elevator by themselves, sort of looking at their shoes. And Bob drives everybody crazy because he's 6'6", and so he's very intimidating. And finally, the CFO looked over at him and he said, "This is the first time bad news has gone above the 72nd floor." So your job is to make sure the bad news goes above the 72nd floor, and the way to do that is to focus on the board of directors. What we ended up doing at Sears was taking a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal with picture of the board of directors and the headline, "The Sears Board of Directors, Non-Performing Assets." We had all of their names in the ad, and we explained why the company was such a disaster. And they caved about 2 weeks later. So thank you very much.